episode 62 of the Critical Fools podcast. This week, we'll be discussing and reviewing the 2016 film How to Be Single, directed by Christian Ditter. One interesting note about this film that I learned actually the other day as I was preparing for the pod is that it's actually based on a novel by Liz Tuccillo. And actually, the reason I bring her up is that her other novel, I think, is actually more well known. I don't know if you've seen the film. He's Not That Into You is actually that film is actually based on her novel, which is I think the one that's probably more in the social conscious. But I didn't know that until I actually looked that up. So I found that pretty interesting. So yeah, the backdrop. I think honestly, for the sake of this discussion review, I think we're going to talk about the films here and there, but I think the topics this kind of touches on is actually pretty interesting. Even though, I'm gonna be honest with you, the film to me felt very, rom-com, cookie cutter. Let's be honest, in my opinion, at least. And the style also was very of the, let's say, the modern rom-com style.
Yeah, I
But
think that it's kind of cliche.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of cliche. I do think that what's interesting is that because it's based on this author's book, and also the screenplay is written by, actually I think it's two women, and though there's three screenplay writers and two of them are women, I think it also, I'm trying to say this without triggering people, I think it also gives you an insight into a certain perspective of a certain social economic let's say archetype in our society.
Regional
as well. So I want to leave it at that, but I guess maybe I'll start with asking a different question. Is there something about this film that surprised you that you didn't see coming, or you're just like, oh wow, that's interesting, they actually went that direction? Yeah.
Well, the one thing I will say, and I'll give kudos to this, is I thought they had some great cinematography, really interesting shots. The two that come to mind, obviously the Grand Canyon, the ending scene was just right. They were trying to show just how immense and how beautiful kind of the world is, and just her just taking it in because she's doing something like by herself, and she's kind of, the main character's fully accepting that, just being single. And the other thing that kind of comes to mind, or the other scene, is when she's really sad because she has a fight with her, and this is Alice. She has a fight with Robin at her own birthday party, and so she's sad and ends up going and sitting on the staircase. And I really like the angle where they chose to pan and kind of show the skyscrapers as she's kind of sitting suspended there above the big drop, and it really gives you sort of a perspective with how lonely she feels at that moment. I thought those were really good. They had some really good sort of directorial or shots within the film that I thought was I kind of wasn't expecting this film. I thought whoever directed it, they did a good job with those choices. So I would say that from just a filmmaking standpoint, that kind of impressed me a little bit. The main storyline is kind of cliche, right? A lot of it was from a woman's perspective in dating, specifically kind of more upper class working women, or women in New York City, so more cosmopolitan rather than more rural areas.
Yeah, I definitely, like you said, it was certain archetypes of a certain demo, basically, right? It was basically, honestly, if we're being very facetious here, at least in my opinion, these movies are made because these are the people who would pay to watch this movie and buy it.
Sure.
And we know how Hollywood works. We don't have to get into that, but
it's a business model, right? You want to make films that you're going to make money. So the reason why they make a bunch of Marvel adaptations.
Yeah. And I think to my earlier point about this film and the other film that we kind of mentioned, He's Not Into You, they're based on somebody's kind of books, and I didn't even know that. I didn't even know they were books. I think it shows you that there's a market, and there's also how do I say it? These are probably also topics of conversation on the other aisle, so the gender, in my opinion, as well, from what I've seen. So going back to the beginning.
What was the other rom-com we kind of did? 500 Days of Summer. That was kind of from the more male perspective. So this is the opposite end of that.
Yes, more male perspective. But what I liked about that one is that it kind of
It was more,
deconstructed a
it
little
was
bit.
more realistic in many ways too, I would say.
Yeah, it was. I thought it deconstructed a little more of the tropes here and there. This one, I think, focuses on, like you said, the tropes, but also I think how, like you said, like it's a one-way perspective. Like I think they try to inject the one male perspective with the dad that lost his wife.
Yeah.
But
Well,
for the
no,
for
that's not
the
true. You had the other male as well.
Tom, but you
Yeah.
know, but Tom is such an archetype that like I wonder how many of these Toms exist. Like I'm a guy, and I think I met only like one.
Oh, I met a couple.
But I mean, like, let's say you take like 80, like 50 dudes, like what percentage of that are Toms who act like that and actually do that?
One.
Exactly. It's like a percentage. But for some reason, I've noticed that like women think that like, and this is something I can get from my own anecdotal stories here because I live in New York. Like they think like 50% of guys are like this. It's like, what are you talking about? So either they're like Tom or they're creeper.
Well,
I'm like, oh my goodness.
I mean, yeah, everyone kind of goes to the extremes, right? It's like even you and I both know there's been a rise over the last several years of like really kind of misogynistic male pods in a way. Specifically, one that we both know and have heard is like Fresh and Fit, right? They come out with like ridiculous. That's the opposite end of like male spectrum. I saw a stupid clip not that long ago where they were talking about how a lot of women are getting flown out to Dubai, right? To like, but for models and having everything paid for. One of the guests is like, what percentage of women do you think are doing that? And one of the co-hosts he's like, it's probably around 40 to 50%. I was like, are you like, where are you coming up with that like idea that 40 to 50% of women are getting flown out and having everything paid for to the Middle East? Like, it was just such a ridiculous like way where I was like, I can't take these like idiots seriously. It's kind of the same thing where it's like a lot of people gravitate to the extremes of the stereotype of each sex. I don't
Yeah.
think
So I think the way to approach this particular episode is going to be we should take each of the characters and kind of like talk about them and then give our thoughts, because by talking about the characters we basically share the plot. So spoiler warning. So I'm actually going to start with Meg's character, so Alice's sister, right? So she is a doctor. I think she works with actually pregnant mothers, right? There's a name for this, but she delivers babies or something. Like she works in that field.
yeah,
right.
Prenatal.
Yeah, and she obviously exudes the archetype of independent career woman that
pushed off having a family.
Yeah, didn't want kids because it was, she wanted to be, independent. And then she has this, you can argue it's a cliche or it's a, come out of nowhere, but she has this moment where she suddenly wants to have a child. But obviously she has no husband or partner, so she goes through the route of donor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then she comes across and starts dating let's say a bit of a younger man, not too much, but it seems like at least like a 5-7 age year difference.
Probably 10 to 15 was my guess.
Oh wow, 10 to 15.
Yeah.
I thought the sister wasn't that older than Alice.
Oh, I think she was a decent bit older because Alice was just like graduating college, dude.
Yeah, and it seems like her sister was like 32 or something, like 31. That's the vibe I got.
I put her in mid-30s at least.
All right. And I thought the guy was like closer to Alice's age, yeah. Like he was also like he was in, like just out of college as well.
That would be about 10 years, dude, at least.
All right, so let's give it 10 years.
I mean, I don't think it matters exactly how much older. It's just he was a
it's a significant gap, or like if it was reversed, you would still like, hey, you're 35 dating a 21-year-old, So I get what you're saying. So and she struggles with
but I think that brings a point that you probably addressed in a bit. It's like you don't really see it that often where a much older woman dates younger men, but the opposite is more so true.
Yes. And she struggles with being pregnant by herself and also dating a much younger man, where she feels like is not sustainable. Honestly, her initial intuitions are not wrong. I would say actually, like it's on paper, you would be like, well, this guy might be moving on in like a year or two, but he's actually really into her, and like he actually. Okay, this is where it's a bit of an archetype because I've yet to meet a. Actually, I met one guy like this only.
No, there's a few, dude.
No, I meant more like he actually says he wants to be like a home dad and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, there's a few. I've met a few.
I've only met one, but I'm just saying it's not as common as like, yeah, people might hope they were, but anyway, so and basically the end of their story is that she ends up letting him be a part of the I guess raising this child that is I guess technically not his, but he's gonna be the dad of his child.
Well, he's their child, but it's not his. It's like being a stepfather.
Yeah, he's gonna be. That's just the right term. He's gonna be a stepfather to this child, and we don't know how that ends, but like it leaves on a good note. But with her character, I thought it was interesting how one funny comedic thing was like this happens all the time, or like when this I think Alice invites Meg to like the company or this some event, right? And like she's just I guess staring his way. He comes over, remember, and he's just like, oh, what's up? And then he's like all awkward, like, wait, you're staring at me.
I thought you want me to come over. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
You want me to leave?
Yeah,
you misread the signal.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's funny because like the signal is just a glance, like it's so brutal for dudes. It's like you said, it could just been
It's all the subtle kind of signals that I'm not sure actually are. But then if like you don't pick up on it, and then some women are like, "How the hell did you not understand I was into you?" Like
exactly.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I know. But again, I thought her character was interesting in terms of his development. I've actually tried to find some critiques. A lot of I went to the child-free forum. So to clarify, child-free are people or couples that believe in not having children because they want to be, retire early or for whatever reason. A lot of people in that community had an issue with this character. Actually, they thought it was too cliche of a typical person who didn't want children to suddenly have a moment and then now suddenly wants a man and stuff. And I understood their critique. I looked for it because I wanted to see some pushback on this movie. There was a lot of pushback on different aspects. This is one of the aspects that I was a bit surprised about because I'm not that familiar with the child-free community. But I became more so in recent months. And what was interesting was that, like, I guess what's your take? Do you agree? Like, do you think it was too much of a cat out of the hat, or sorry, rabbit out of the hat? Like, suddenly she wants to have a child, and suddenly she also is open to having a husband or a boyfriend.
What I will say, it's like an hour and a half kind of movie, so you can only do so much when you're trying to make a film of this style. It's also like how do I say this? It's like a cliche rom-com, so they're not going to go too deep. It's not going to be fully fleshed out characters in every aspect of it, right? It's meant to have some comedic moments. It's generally what this film is made to do, right? Do I think it's cliche? Yeah, I think some of it was like, all right, that's a quick turnaround. Okay, yeah, you're a working woman that's now going to date somebody that's not only much younger than you, but he said he was a secretary. So I imagine the income differences are a lot more varied between the two couples. And generally, a lot of women I've met, they want dudes who make about the same as them, if not more, by and large. I'm sure you would agree with that. And a lot of data kind of backs that up. So a lot of the dynamics, it's like, well, I have seen examples to the contrary. That's just not the norm. So that's how I could say, well, yeah, this character is not necessarily the most realistic, right?
Yeah, I didn't post in this child-free.
But what I will say is, there could be a moment where you kind of realize, shoot, is my career worth it, or just pushing this off? Or there might be something where you see, maybe there is something else that I want or I didn't really consider. Like that could happen too.
Yeah, and to wrap this bow up before we move on to a different characters, if I had a post in the child-free forum, I would have written that, like, I haven't read the book. Huh?
Yeah, it's like, while that might not be you necessarily, that doesn't mean that there aren't certain people that could happen.
No, but actually, what I was going to say was that I think I haven't read the book, but at least the film, they're trying to show you different archetypes of what we see, like I said, of a certain demo of women, and there are women who we know this archetype because I've seen them, myself. Like they were doing all the right things, school and dating and all this stuff, and they thought they didn't want kids, and then they got older, realized, oh, actually, I do want kids. But then like now the time is kind of shrunk, and so now they have to figure out what are their options in that limited time. And
and then they get very concerned with their biological clocks. I'm sure we both know several people that fall into that category.
Yeah, and I think also the more common path actually is like they were like it just didn't work out. Whatever, let's say the handful of relationships they were in, and now they're feeling the crunch. So maybe they always wanted that, but like they're just not unlucky. So I guess you could have had a character like that, but. I thought actually the maid character, also the one thing that's underrated for her story arc, is like she went with the donor and the that path. That's not always on TV or on movies, so I'll say that, like, kudos there. But anyways, let's move to her sister, because that's the one that that's the main character, obviously, this film, and like that's the one I'm like, okay, this has so many archetypes in it that it's unbelievable. I mean, you have the serial dater that gets lost in her relationships. Her friend calls her out on it later. She also.
My favorite is the how it starts off. I want to take a break.
Yeah.
And then she thinks like when she's done with her break that her partner is just going to take her back. It's like, well, no, he's kind of moved on.
But we've discussed this in the past off the record. Like women, they think like this. Like, he's interested in me now, he'll always be interested in me. And it's like, I don't understand. Like, where do you get this? Like,
not true.
Like maybe if you're like you're the guy that's into you has got no self-esteem, and he's he's subscribing to 50 OnlyFans. But like,
well, no, Chris. I mean, typically if something happens where you get burned or something, generally it's like, nah, too much has happened. So then a lot of people move on. It's not the same as when you met.
But there are people who like they have a toxic relationship, they get back in and out of it.
That's not the majority of people.
I know. I'm just saying there are other exceptions.
A lot of people, if they get burned, it's like, well, you burned me or you want to move on, and now that I have, then you get mad because you want them to take you back. So that's not the way it works. It's not the way people are kind of built generally.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think there are exceptions, but I think I do agree with you where like I don't understand their logic though. So what I'm trying to say is that like, okay, unless you believe your relationship is this and this person is this like dysfunctional that it's gonna work this way, why would you assume? That's what that always blows me. Is like, if they do take you back, there's probably something wrong with them. Especially if they like, because the guy was totally flabbergasted. I would be too, like, oh wait, what? And then like, she wanted to
like everything's great, but how do we know we're truly made for each other?
And what's interesting is that if I was able to connect this, what Robin would call her out for later in the film, she kind of did it herself in the beginning. When she wanted the break, she said, "Oh, I don't know myself outside of us."
Yeah.
And this happens to a lot of women. Actually, the feminist Mystique talks about it too back in the day. And Robin calls her out later, and the same thing. I think it finally hit her then. Like, oh wait, like this is the reason I started this break, because then she, like you said, she got to the moment where like she became, in my opinion, more envious of what he had moved on and he had found a good partner, and like she had become envious that wasn't her, versus forgot why she even did the break in the first place because she didn't know who her was.
I did find it hilarious later on when they kind of reconnected, right, for that brief moment, and he's like, I just need closure. I was like, wow. I was like, that was the most F-boy thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. And she's like, you needed closure by like sleeping?
Yeah, but he's like, you're still engaged. Are you kidding me? I was like, wow, that was the most messed up thing, most messed up like dynamic in the film.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yeah, I mean, I the thinking is terrible, but it's basically closure.
No, there's people who would do that.
Yeah. You need to do that one last ride, just to see if they.
What did you think about the friend, Robin's character, who never settles down?
Well, she did clarify on that, right? She does settle down. She says it's the.
Do you think she ever does settle down?
Maybe she finds the right guy. I guess with Robin's character, she's such an archetype of like the party girl that it's almost too obscene, like almost too
Yeah,
cliche.
obviously these are the most extreme archetypes, right?
But I will give them credit. They made her rich. Like it revealed that, and I was like, okay, at least
I
that's
laughed so
realistic.
hard when I heard that.
I was like, at least that's realistic, because there's no way a girl making it in New York is partying as much as she is, in like those places. So, and I like how Alice was like, wait, but I've been paying for everything, and she's like, that's how I stay rich. I was dying on that. Was a good one.
They a couple good lines in the film.
I think Robin's character, I don't know if it was intentional to make her chubby or big boned, but her archetype is super interesting, because it is that cliche party girl lifestyle where, like, get with a lot of guys,
never down, be independent.
Yeah, be independent and just treat guys as guys treat women.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, I think there's a lot of fiction around that, but
some dudes do, the party dudes.
Yeah,
the Toms before he starts to change.
Yeah, that's the Tom and the. We'll get to them, but actually, my favorite two story arcs actually was Tom and what's her name?
I like Lucy.
Lucy and Tom were the most interesting, because those are the especially the Lucy archetype. Those are the Tom and Lucy are the archetypes that I see the most in New York.
By the way, the George character, I was dying because he was Rafi in the league.
Oh yeah, I know. I was just like Rafi. Anyways, he was a funny character. Actually, his scene with, like, when she had the meltdown with a children's book, I was like, but he's a naturally good comedic actor, right? He was like, okay, please, we're gonna have you sign papers as you leave. I was dying because she totally lost it. Yeah, and then like he's like, we're gonna take this book and pencil away from you. I was like dying, dude.
They don't even cut.
No, the scissors.
Your underwear. They're meant to cut construction paper. So
I was like dying. But we'll get into the second. But it was with Robin. Yeah, I mean, it was the party girl archetype, and I think when she jumped on the taxi, I was like, okay, really?
Yeah, but, I mean, I have some silly.
But I think it's good that they show that she's rich. I think also, I will say this, and I know the film wasn't ever going to go there, but I also question how emotionally, mentally healthy that lifestyle is.
Well, it's shallow. Most people do that in like the early 20s, and you kind of grow up a little bit. She's clearly not just in her early 20s, and it doesn't seem like she wants to change anytime soon.
And obviously, she's an exaggeration, but I would argue that a lot of people, especially now with this, I'm learning, like Peter Zion says, sorry to name drop, but like the Gen Z is socially awkward. I question if they're even doing that.
No, in any generation, you're gonna have some people doing that.
Yeah, some. But you're right. I just
on average, I think it's probably not as much. But yeah, there's always.
It's definitely not as much. I'll promise you that. But yeah, it was interesting. Her character was actually, she was the comedic energy often, right? So she was
Wilson's
especially when she like invited like Alice's all of her guys to the party. I was just like, okay, this is.
Yeah, but she was just doing that to stir things up, not because she was actually looking out for her friend.
Exactly. I was like, wow, too much.
Selfish.
But yeah, we can drop this, because honestly, I will say this: Alice I know she's the center, but I actually think that all the guys she was into, other than the guy with the deceased wife, and obviously Tom, but Tom doesn't really count.
No, Tom was just a rebound.
Yeah. Oh, I do like how when the other guys met her ex, they were like, Josh.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah, I was dying because it's true. They're both like very like cookie cutter bland, dude. Yeah. But yeah, so now we can move on to my two favorite characters in the movie, Tom and Lucy.
Okay.
Wait, we can start with Lucy because she starts the film with the peanut thing.
She's like a manifesting kind of girl.
Yeah.
I'm gonna manifest a husband.
Yes.
Manifest like this life that I want, and it'll happen. That was the plan from her.
he's got to want kids. He's got to be a good job. He's got to be college educated. He's got to be this tall. I was just I've seen this so many times. I'm just dying. Dude. I was laughing so hard.
I was cringing though when she was really into the one dude, and they're like at the train station. It was like station or something, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I could pack you a lunch," like blah blah blah, and then like it's this photo album of them together. They're like, listen, I think we're taking this slow. I mean, we're still seeing other people. And she's like, we're still seeing other people? Yeah, but I think we should stop seeing each other now. And then she's like furious because she misread the situation, right? And then this guy comes back.
He's like, I want the lunch. You should have grabbed the lunch first, dude. I
was laughing so hard.
But yeah, she's definitely she was you said it best. She was manifesting what you wanted. And Tom called her out on it, because she was like, they meet because she's using his Wi-Fi, which is funny, but that happens a lot in New York too. But and she goes she's got the whole system, right? Like she says that she has all this. I always forget this movie was made like a while ago, before like maybe the blowing up before. Yeah, but we have now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was interesting to see how she goes from that, kind of like systematic. I'm gonna have my list. I'm gonna look through the data, and you forget that other day that she had, where like she had that guy, and she's like, oh, everything checks out, everything's perfect. They go to the Tom's bar, and Tom like says like, if you need a bailout, just give me the signal.
Oh yeah,
go to my office. Because the guy's like a freaking like not anything she thought he was.
Like, oh yeah, you said you're on like the bucket list, and it was everything sexual, and she was just getting freaked out. And then she says like the key word, and then he leaves, and she goes and hides.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's plenty of women who've had bad experiences or bad dates like that.
Yeah, but I like that because it highlighted like she was trying to find this guy that is supposed to exist,
right?
Like through her system. Through her system and through her analysis and through her, whatever, and it doesn't.
But the peanut scene had me dying too.
Yeah, I like the visual of it. It was so funny. Where's all the women? He just eats them all. I mean, there are still like probably in that subgroup can't be.
Yeah, it was just funny. You get it was over exaggerations, but it was hilarious.
But again, like I'll give the movie credit. Is like each character, their own. I guess you could critique maybe their caricature, but whatever their caricature is, except for Robin, I think they get something that challenges that, and then they are forced to deal with that. So we talked about Meg, and with Lucy, she's having that meltdown in the children's bookstore. I guess she does like readings on the side or something. I don't know. I forgot why she was there. And the guy that's like tells her to, calm down and like chats her up ends up being her husband,
Mm-hmm.
And there was no system. And I know like this is the other side of it. Like people critique like,
well, it was more organic.
Yeah. You can't push this fate stuff. That's like, it goes back to the soulmate crap, right? Like, oh, well, the odds are so low. And I think we use the wrong terms, but like you said, I think you used the right term. It was just organic. There was just a chemistry there. And I think most importantly, her mindset was different.
Right. It's like she was trying to force it and manifest. It's just like it was a normal interaction. Probably clicked, had some chemistry, and things just worked out. Now, I'm not saying it's fate stuff, but it's just putting yourself in positions to be open for something that may develop. And that's the whole point. She was trying to force it all along, and then she just kind of had it all let it happen naturally.
Yeah, that was to me the thing is that like when because she was also, if you looked at the like especially with the guy that scene with the lunch, she was so trying to have like control the path. Like, oh, we're going. These are the milestones. Like some kids do this, right? This is the milestones. This is 2 months. This is 3 months.
But even like Tom's character, like he was trying to force things.
Yeah,
and then he waited too late, and he realized he started having feelings. And it was just like, the time's passed because you acted too late.
Exactly. He had a. We'll get into him right now because it's a good segue. But to wrap up Lucy, like I think you're right. It was. I felt like from my viewing, like it was her. Once her mindset changed, like instead when she didn't feel that pressure to like make the relationship, like you said, like the way she wanted it worked out for her. And I think
Oh, by the way, I would.
there's a lesson in that. Go ahead.
Yes, I totally agree. The one scene I wanted to bring up before we transition, well, it involves those two characters, but the part I cringed the most or had the most tough time getting through was when Lucy was at the bar doing some work. She's in sweatpants, and then the bachelorette party comes in, and she recognizes her, and they're like, "Oh my God, how are you doing? Are you married?" Blah blah blah, and you could tell she's just like sweating because she's so uncomfortable. Because because one of her friend who she hasn't seen in a while is engaged, and you know, you could tell she wishes she was her, but she's just uncomfortable with where she's at in her, you know, single life at that point. And then Tom comes in and does a nice thing and kind of like helps her like move through that transition. But that was very uncomfortable when you could tell she was just getting called out.
Now you bring it up. I remember that scene. Yeah, it was
awkward.
Awkward.
Cringy. I didn't like it.
Yeah, it's also like it's always tough. Like I think that's more of a women thing. Like,
well, I think that's what IG. I mean, I'm sure you see this with like IG. It's like when like a lot of women, they see their friends or whatever getting married, and if they're single, then you know they get a little like bitter or annoyed.
Yeah, exactly. But it's IG. It's fake. Anyways, yeah.
Well,
I'll say this as somebody has craft their IG. It's partially manipulated.
It's a facade, is what you're saying.
But you know, you gotta play the game to win. So, that was it. I remember that scene. I thought it was just, I don't know.
It was kind of cringe.
I was just like, whatever, dude. Like, I didn't personally care for their arc there, because at that point, I'll be honest, like, I didn't like her character that much because she left such a bad impression. But then as she evolved, she grew on me. I was like, oh, you're becoming one of my favorites of this.
You're right.
This cliche rom-com. I think I'll rank him at the end, but like Alice, honestly, I was like, ugh. Anyways, even Robin, I was like, okay, at least I could respect your, you know, okay. You're just doing that. But anyways, going to Tom, which is now we're in the field of men, so we could talk about this more in detail. But I guess, Tom's character is like, even how he's introduced, where he's got the neighbor. I wish I had that kind of neighbor.
Yeah, you want to come over? It's like, okay.
I was like, that's the dream. That was the dream.
Now, what was needing some help, and I was just like, wow, okay, now we're going with like the most absurd stereotype.
Yeah, and she comes over to help him.
But there are a select few dudes where it is that easy.
Yeah, of course, they're the best. Anyways,
Okay. Sure. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so so he's the bartender at this bar. I will say this. His archetype is toxic in the beginning. He starts evolving to his credit. But there is one scene where he does spit some truth when he's trying to like teach Lucy like how he's able to like date multiple women and like
Alice. Oh no,
is it Alice? Is it Lucy? It's one of them, right?
Yeah.
But like, you know, that scene where like he's talking to, I mean, he gets slapped in it because he's so over the top, but like he says like basically says what they want to hear. But
that's Lucy.
Yeah, says what they want to hear. Like, sorry, no, the message is not what they want to hear, but says it in such a way that's so like gentleman.
Like everything, when you talk to them, they hear only what they want to hear.
Yeah, but like, how do I describe it? I guess like, it's like basically a line where he says like, you know, I don't think we could be together because I care so much about you.
Yeah.
You have bigger things going for you. It's like the nicest way, actually. I get it as a woman to be broken up with. You're like, wow, this guy like really like.
You care about me? I care about you too.
Yeah.
But she didn't want to hear the broken up part. It was just this selective hearing. Yeah.
Or she did hear it. But like, I mean, he moved on like the next scene. So like, it was all fake, right? But like, I think that scene, I think if I had to like tell people like, you know, the dark arts, like you gotta be like that, unfortunately. Like you have to basically, because people think this is where, like you mentioned earlier, the toxic pods, this is where they're completely full of crap. What I've seen in the field out there is that most normal, okay, I don't want to say normal, but most people, generally speaking, this is at work, this is in family, this is in life, right? They don't take well to being crapped on. Like all this, like, mean teasing, mean bullying. Most people, unless they have real issues, they don't take well to that. They go, okay, back off. I don't know you. Get out of here, right?
Mhm.
But the way to really navigate this world is kind of like Tom, other than being good looking, is like being kind of like this guy that talks like,
Hey, sorry, my mom's calling me. Can you like pause or edit this? It was like,
yeah, I can pause it. Yeah.
sorry, give me like 2 minutes. Sorry to cut you off. We'll talk about Tom after this. Sorry about that. My mom like called me 3
Everything all
times.
right?
No, she's fine. She's like, sorry, I like butt called you. I was like 3 times. I was like, you got to be careful. I thought something was like more serious. Anyway, so you were saying with Tom, and you were talking about the cliches.
Yeah. So I just want to highlight that one scene because that was the one scene where I thought when I saw it, my first reaction was like, man, I've seen this work. I've actually seen this work. Not like in that specific breakup, but like be so like emotionally even keeled where like you're saying things that normally a guy would say if they were really into a girl. Like, you know what? I really care about you. You know what? You know, I understand you're not into me. I wish the best. And then walk away. Like that's almost more of a power move than all these other men tips that you get. Like, oh, do this, you know, shit test on them. It's like, nah, like if you really, because I've noticed if like a girl feels like you're like really like emotionally like, you know, chill. The thing is that it's a bad tool because once you know that, if you use it for the wrong reason, it's like power, right? Yeah, it's so manipulative. It's so bad. Like it's terrible. So like my advice, like,
I'm sure we've both seen that in different aspects with people. Like,
but that works way more effectively than any of this. Like, I mean,
other
have
stuff,
that, yeah, other stuff. But anyways, moving on. Like, obviously, he basically ends up like you hinted earlier, catches feelings for Lucy. He also,
But I think
he
he
also
kind of
bangs.
and it does happen to dudes. You know, just at a certain point, after he's around so much, you realize it's kind of hollow, and that's not what you want, like going forward. And I mean, that's where he starts to make the change. Like he starts to turn on the water to his place, so he realizes it's not. He's like, I've already been there, done that. He's like, that's not necessarily how I want to keep living.
Oh, that's true. That was funny. That was a funny scene too, where he shows Alice his apartment little rules for like it keeps the people out. I was just like, it's wow, the water, the food.
Frank, he has the nightstand mini fridge.
Yeah, I was like, this guy's ruthless. Also, I will say this: his apartment unrealistic for a bartender, but what I found like that was a good scene. But it's a movie, yeah. But one thing I do want to highlight about his character too is like oh wait, one more funny moment before I get into that. I like how Robin tells Alice about the drink rule, how many drinks it takes.
Yeah, between there.
And then that scene where she's counting all the drinks. I was like, okay.
Oh yeah, number 11.
I was like, okay. But anyways, Tom and Alice, they have some interesting conversations. They do sleep with together. But you know, they have some interesting conversations on like obviously their dilemmas. And I think what happened to Tom also happens to I think a lot of guys, right? Like I think there are instances where you're just, you know, super attracted initially, but sometimes I think what's lost in our cultural discussions that sometimes guys do get attracted to somebody over time too.
Sure.
I think there is this archetype or cliche that like, oh, he's not into me like week one, like he was never into me, but I think that's a myth. And I think that's
and then you end up like being like, oh snap, that like dude might think, you know, someone's cute initially, but then you get to know them more and then you gradually become more attracted.
Exactly. And I think our society has done a disservice, especially in this modern, let's say, climate where it's gotta be like, you know, I gotta feel the butterflies. I've heard that a lot, you know, my time here. And I'm always like, well, sometimes that happens.
Butterflies, but the butterflies after like day one.
Yeah. It's just crazy, and I think
It was some
like,
females you met in New York, right?
of course, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, what I liked about this one, why I picked is that, like, when I
Yeah,
saw
'cause
this
New
film,
York.
yeah, if I was still living in New Jersey, I think this film would have been like, maybe back, but I was like, no, I actually see a lot of these archetypes all the effing time, and it's killing me, dude. Like this is too toxic, dude. Like,
Is it
uh,
more Manhattan or Brooklyn, dude?
I mean, I have to. I'll get
Manhattan.
back to you. Get back to you because
Manhattan.
I just found my Brooklyn scene
Oh,
of recently. So right now, I'd say it's been more Manhattan,
sure.
but I'll let you know my Brooklyn scene. But I imagine it's similar though. It's not
I
that
don't.
the city.
That kills me. You don't feel butterflies on day one, and then automatically you write it out. Like that's stupid. You
It
should get
happens a
like,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. What happens if you don't get it on day one, but you start to get to know the person more day 2, 3, and then they really start to develop. I mean, how many times have you felt butterflies after meeting someone initially? That
Not
doesn't
often.
really
Yeah.
happen.
But I think like for a guy, I think this is where it gets
But it's
confusing.
more unrealistic. Is what
Yeah, I think where it gets confusing is that guys tend to confuse infatuation with love.
Oh,
A-
absolutely.
And I think women also think that because I think I'm telling you, like in Tom's case, right? Like he did make the move fine. It took him a time, but I'm telling you, the archetype, or not the archetype, the lot of perspective from people that I've met of recent years is like if the guy's not into you, he was never into you. That's what they tell themselves. It's like, oh, he was never into you. And there's like, how did he catch feelings? And then they get pissed and they go, oh, see, that's why all men, you can't be friends with them because they just want to get in your pants eventually. And that's a whole different conversation. But I think it's what I want to highlight is that like what happened to Tom happens to a lot of guys where like it just takes long like time to
What happened?
realize.
Oh, snap! It's chill, and then you kind of develop over time. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily that people. That's the thing that also makes me mad. It's not that dudes always want to like sleep with you or like have ulterior motives. Sometimes it just happens like over time.
Exactly. But I think unfortunately, like what I just like you just said, that becomes the topic.
And I've seen that happen several times with women too. So don't get it twisted. I mean, there might be some physical attraction initially, but you just are chill. But you develop more emotional over time. That happens with both sexes, whether people want to admit it or not.
Yes, but I think in our current mainstream culture, men get more demonized for that.
I'm not saying they don't, but I'm just saying that it happens to both.
It definitely happens to both because I want to go back to my earlier points that I think what Tom went through is actually more normal than people think, and I think people just again the culture has put in their brain that if it's not instantaneous or like you said, or if you're a girl, right, and you're like, oh, this guy now wants to get with me. This guy was never my friend. Like, it's not so black and white, but
That's
people like to think in those stories.
I hate hearing stuff like that.
But it's unfortunate. But I think what's good about Tom's character is that he has that kind of evolution. It doesn't work out with him and Lucy, obviously, but he ends up changing his ways because he realizes that he's changed, which I think I was surprised how many characters actually had some real growth in this film. Like growth in the sense of like little things, but like, because you could easily have it easily could have been a way
too more cliche.
Yeah.
Was there an archetype that, or like another storyline that you wish they had included? It was more along the female lines in this.
That's a good question. But real quick, I want to give you a chance. Is there any other character you want to discuss? Because those are the ones I thought were kind of like important for me. I did feel for the dad that lost his wife, but that felt kind of shoehorned in though. But
it was a little too forced, and it's like it didn't develop so much. I get he ended up like actually consoling his daughter and opening up, but it felt kind of like a little too forced in this whole situation. I feel like this was more focused on female aspects of being single, by and large. Obviously, there's Tom, but the four main women were like different archetypes. Yeah. Anyway, going to my question: was there an archetype you wish they had included, or a type of story?
Yeah, but I really can't fault the movie because I think it's even a more modern thing. The movie came out like 8 years ago. I think an archetype it's worth exploring now. Huh? 8 years ago, right? 6, yeah. I think an archetype that's worth exploring now is actually like, how do I say this? Like, One where you have somebody that's kind of like Alice, fresh out of college, but starts her job, but doesn't like the job too much. Kind of like what happens with dudes sometimes. Like instances where like you thought you were gonna do a career, then you pivot, but then you realize that maybe you don't want this, and then
Trying to figure out what you want.
Yeah, and then like they're dating, but it's kind of like this is too superficial. So they're like, oh, like all men are just toxic, Like I wanted an archetype that kind of represented like the time we're in, but I can't fault the movie for that. Like because what I see often is like
that existed even at that point too.
But I guess for the time period, I would say one archetype I would have liked is like somebody who's just like kind of miserable,
Yes. That's where I was going with someone who made like really bad dating choices, and like someone who called them out. I mean, I know some people who was just like, you keep dating the same type of dude, and you just get burned and never really learn. And then they always kind of wanted family, and it just didn't work out. Unfortunately, tragic, but we have a few family friends that are like that.
Yeah, and yes, sir, go ahead.
And they're
and I would have liked it to have been on the older side because I think the little I would say out they give themselves. I'm not saying Alice has that bad of a dating history, but the out they gave her at the end was like, oh, she has her whole life in front of her still.
Yeah, my issue with this is they make it seem like you should just accept every part, or like any stage you are if you want to be single. And I mean, there's some truth to that, but there are some people that generally aren't happy with the way things turned out, and they don't talk about that in this film.
Exactly, that would be a heavier topic, right?
Yeah, but I don't think they wanted to go with that route with this kind of route.
Yeah, and I will say that like they could have either done it. My preference would have been an older person looking back on their dating history, but they even could have done it with somebody who was 25 that just dates like F boys.
No, I would have liked the older.
I would have preferred, but I'm saying they could have even done that, and I think then that would have been like even a more complete picture of archetypes.
Well, that kind of person is like, remember this YouTube short series I showed you, Bros, where you had the female who just went after all the finance dudes. It was the same type of deal.
Yeah, it still happens, but I don't go to those bars. It's actually I know the bars too. Actually, Hair the Dog and the Spaniard. I never go to those.
The Spaniard? Oh Lord.
I never go to those. Those are like, even though there's always going to be exceptions. I've heard like random stories where people are like, those places are good. I actually met my husband there. I'm like, okay, I don't like that's not the scene though. I do want to go once because I actually avoided those places, but like I've seen them, like it's New York, right? You can look outside and see what it's like, and you're just like, man, all I see is like finance guy like to the brim, dude. Like, dude, it's all finance dudes. It's crazy, and they're all throwing cash and stuff. It's like, okay, dude.
I know I got called a finance bro when I was in New York. That made me sad.
That was great, dude. That's how I'm calling you every time, finance bro. Anyways, you did look like one too.
That happened.
You did look like one. When he said, I was like, wait, you actually do look like one. I should have said something. But I was like, okay.
Stop laughing. You're like, this is the funniest insult I've heard.
I was like, this is good, dude. He hates finance bros. But now you are one of them on paper.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, but yes, that was the one archetype. You're right. It was missing. It was kind of like, in general, somebody that just has a real bad dating history, right? Because I would argue that Alice's choices of men were not actually okay. Josh had that one toxic moment, but in general, they weren't like. Even Tom, who slept around, he didn't seem like a real evil.
And I've met several girls like that. They just go from one relationship to another.
Exactly, I've seen that a lot too. Or like they have to be in something. It's crazy, And it's but yeah, that's the one that was kind of missing. I agree. I guess for you, was there any other kind of, is that the only storyline you thought was missing, or is there another one?
What was that?
Is that the only kind of archetype you thought was missing, or is there another one?
That was the most important one, because at the end of the day, the conclusion was like, whether you're at this point in your life, this point, you should just accept it where you're at and be happy, right? Because this moment's going to fleet, and then you're going to find someone, and it's going to be gone. It's like, well, it's true, but some people are like that permanently too. And then we know some people that are cool with that, which is fine. But then I met people, you could definitely tell they're not, or like things didn't work out, and they're kind of single or alone, or they're a single mom, single dad, and they're just kind of like, you know, they're not happy with where they're at in their life. And
Yeah.
life, that's not going to change.
And there's one other archetype too, right? But this movie didn't have to cover it, in my opinion, because there's a lot of other books and movies that do it. Also, the people who do end up getting married, but realize that this was just like the last call. You know, like I don't. There's a lot of marriages that are like that. You know, where they was just like, well, I'm not gonna. This is it. You know, so I might as well. But like they would have preferred. I'm gonna quote somebody that I heard once tell me this. She told me it's hard to compare the guys you see now with the ones that you really liked before, and like you try not to compare in your head.
Oh, you past relationships, and then you
Yeah.
judge them based on that.
Yeah, you try not to because it's unfair to them, but like you can't help it sometimes, and like then you start getting depressed because like this
They're not
person might
them.
not, they're not them, you know. And then I was also told like in the end, you know, maybe at this point you focus more on like dating people you can tolerate versus really being in love with them. And I was like, damn.
That's kind of true, but that's also a reason why you might not want to date so much when you're younger, because it might distort your expectations.
I was just like, yeah, that's a good call out there. I was just like, damn. And I was like, no, I still believe in fate. I'm a romantic at heart, dude. I had to get the pump talk. I was like, this game's depressing. What the hell is this?
Like
Yeah.
realistic talk.
No, I love realistic talks, but you know me, I'm an idealist too, you know?
No, you're
Yeah.
not. You
Yeah.
are a realist at the end of the day.
I'm a pragmatist, but like I know when people need that pump up, you know. I'm a good leader, you know. So yeah, they need that pump up. So I
Is
said
that
like,
what they need, or just what you want to give them?
what?
I said, is that really what they need, or is that like, nah, you feel like that's just what you want to give them?
No, that's what they need. Like, I think because I did say, like, you're right. You should focus on, like, you know, that's a good perspective to have. But like, you should also still like genuinely care and have the same values of the person, and you should genuinely want to have a life with them.
I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah, and like, and ideally, you do a love can grow there. You know, no, I mean the conversation was becoming like, what? So if he's just functional or just wants to give you a child, it's good. I was just like, wait, how dark is this going, dude? anyways, that's a little tangent.
To some extent, some people have way too long a list of expectations.
Yeah, that's true too.
And some people have things on their list that don't really matter at the end of the day.
That's true too. But there's also people who need to have some criteria.
Recently who's getting a little bit older, who had a list of 35 things she wanted in a guy.
What? Wait, I feel like I've heard of this person before. You met her at
No, I'm not calling out names. I'm just saying some of those things on the list were very good, and I think they should be in there for a future partner. And somewhere it was like, honestly, that doesn't really matter for somebody long term that you really want to settle with. It's just like more superficial things.
I'm trying.
Anyway.
I don't want to connect the dots, but I think I've heard of this person. But
no, you don't know this person.
I haven't never met her. I think, but like,
no, you don't know this person.
But I feel like you've mentioned this in other times of like,
yeah,
people
have flabbergasted by some of the things.
It was like it was years ago, but not years ago, but in the past, I feel like I'm connecting the dots here because I think you know somebody that like you think they're basically stopping themselves from being happy.
No, I don't. I think you're thinking about somebody else. Yeah.
All right, I'm thinking of somebody else. But either way, this archetype is not uncommon, so it's probably more common than I think. So, I will say 35 things.
But I will say for that, I think everyone should have a list, but it should be like 5 or 6 things that are not compromising a lot of more value side, rather than things that were more superficial.
Well, I mean, I think couples therapists say this often, right? Like, the way to look at it really is you have to pick your like 5 non-negotiables, and that's it. You have to view it less on a wish list and view it more like, what's my non-negotiables?
Yeah.
5. And he said anything beyond 5 is then you have to, it makes you force you to pick, right? Like then, if something superficial is your non-negotiable, he says it's fine, but then you can't have something else there, right? Like it forces you to really be like hone in on like what's really my non-negotiable.
What's really important to you?
Because he says the problem with wish lists is that wish lists don't exist. I like that quote from that therapist. Wish lists don't exist.
That's why it's a wish list.
Yeah, exactly. It's my wish. So if I could generate a dude, so I've always found that interesting. That's the advice I would give to if you ever that ever comes up again.
There's a from that I was a show I was watching called Indian Matchmaking, and they have like in their culture, India, They have like certain matchmakers who kind of piece together. And I don't know if you ever saw this. This is actually a really good show on Netflix because it lets you know on like some cultural insights. But this lady, some of her clients on the female side were, and on the male side, very high demanding, and they wanted like 20 things. She's like, you'll get about 70 to 80%, or I can get you that. And some of them were like 70, 80%. That's like almost failing. Like, I don't want to do that. Like settling, it's like you gotta tamper some of those expectations to a slight degree. Otherwise,
And
like, you know what? Just get a dog, man.
I will say, one other thing I want to just end with the therapist's advice, because I think you might be able to use it now. Apparently, is that the reason he likes to phrase it this way is because he says that people have like these wish lists. They really just want to have some autonomy, and they want to when you rephrase it for them, they still feel like they have the autonomy, but they view it in a different perspective, and it helps them actually like be more open-minded indirectly. I was like, oh, this therapist, you're paid well. I was like, that's actually the right way, because in the end, people don't want to be told no, like you can't have what you want. But if you can still tell them you're getting what you want, but you reframe it so they're not so focused on like the 30-second this. Huh?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You shift the way it's expressed.
Exactly. And I was like, this guy, smart, man.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm using this now, but help people. So, but yeah, it was an interesting way. And I think even for myself, I was like, I should make a list like that, but I haven't gotten around to that.
Yeah, I think everybody should. Anyway, do you want to get in the final ratings with this? Because we kind of deviated with some.
Yeah. I think we wrapped up. I think you can go first with your final thoughts and ratings, and I'll wrap up.
Yeah, so like I started with this, I did think they made some good directing choices. Really led to some good cinematography and choice of how they shot certain scenes. I thought they did a good job with the growth of their characters for them by and large, I would say. Led to exploration of a lot of different stereotypes that they have for people who are either single or in a relationship, or at different stages, whether they were in a relationship, got out of it, or they wanted to be the career woman and then found someone and they weren't quite looking for that. And so it was interesting sort of in their exploration and how they kind of like interwove. It was really interesting to me how they sort of had a script, because Lucy was kind of the character that was on the outside of the main group of the three women. So I thought that was an interesting choice. Overall, for what this film was, I kind of have to grade it accordingly. I give this movie a 7.5 for because it's a rom-com. It wasn't meant to be super serious, and it did sort of explore different stereotypes of people in a dating scene in a more metropolitan area. I thought they did a fairly good job by and large. Were there some cliches for sure, and it wasn't the most absolutely thought-provoking film, so I can't give it like a higher grading. I thought the acting also was pretty good in this movie. I do like Tom's character because I've seen him in some other stuff. I really do like Anders as an actor.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I thought the cinematography was interesting, or there was some good style there. I thought even how they portrayed New York was really cool. Having some having a comparison point. Alice's character, like I said, for the most part, all the characters have some growth. Even Alice, even though that was the most problematic one to me. I do have an issue though with these kind of films, though, is that these kinds of films, whether it's this one or He's Not Into You or Crazy Stupid Love, they all tend to be, and I get it, it's the money maker. It always tends to target a certain demo. So you see this in the storylines and the casting. And I would like to see one day a rom-com of like the Hasidic Jew community. Like I would like to just see eventually some more creativity.
You want Rami to direct one?
Yeah, of course. That'd be great.
He already has a show, dude.
I know, but I mean, in general, like I think the reason, I don't watch these movies much anymore, or at all, actually. Take it back. And I do think that a lot of these kind of films, I feel like they're just pitched as projects to like boost the revenue of studios and stuff, because there is nothing in this film, I will say, other than the characters and how they all connect and all that stuff, that we really can't say we haven't seen from another sitcom, other films. Like I didn't I didn't feel like this was really pushing the envelope. And like if they
Like
had to let
the summer kind of did in some ways.
exactly that film, the reason I always say it's my favorite rom-com, if I had to pick one, is that it does try to it takes a critical shot at a guy that it's all in his head, which we all guys can relate to that. It's all in our head, you know.
I don't know if it's all in his head.
Well, he read more into it than he needed to. He didn't look at the clear signs that she was giving him. I and again, like even like how like we did a whole episode on that, but you know, even when they did the scenes of one perspective versus reality, dream versus reality. Yeah, and I mean that to me was like it's so true, right? You think like, oh, she's looking at me, and then she's not really in reality. Like, I mean, as a guy, like I really was like, I've all been there. At least I've been there.
If that's how she's looking at me or not, like when I saw that scene, I was like, I think, and that's how we thought it was going to go versus reality. It's not really how it happened.
Exactly, it's not how it happened, right? And I think he wanted to see, like you said, what he wanted to see. But yeah, that's my kind of like gripe is that it doesn't really, if you really think about it, it doesn't really push the envelope on nothing. Like nothing we discussed.
Yeah, it didn't really push the envelope.
Yeah, but also even on the cultural, right? Nothing we discussed today. We just kept saying like we know we have examples. Like we know these archetypes. There's nothing.
But I think that's what it's meant for is to like, portray all these archetypes
and make it a fun movie and like add a little sprinkle of you know enjoy being single, blah blah blah. Anyways, the I gave this movie a 5 out of 10. You know, it's
I mean, I think I think we would both agree if they had that archetype or not necessarily archetype, but the storyline of the older woman who, you know, it just didn't quite work out. That would have added a little bit more sauce to the film.
It
would have been a little more interesting, but obviously they weren't going to include that because that wouldn't be funny. That would just be serious.
Yeah, but I would even have bumped the score if, like, let's say Robin had a monologue where she's drunk and she says, "I'm unhappy," and blah blah blah. And then to make it funny, she kind of like trips and falls off the building, and like you know.
Falls off the building, dude.
Yeah, like but like funny in a funny way, you know.
Yeah, that's dark. That's not funny, bro.
Like she didn't mean to trip, but she's just drunk and she's like, I'm shallow and all that. Then I would have been like, okay, that's an interesting. She finally revealed her deepest thoughts, and she was gonna change, but then she didn't have a chance to change. And I would have been like, that's creative, that's ingenious.
That's dark, dude. They're not gonna include that in a film like this.
That's not that dark. It's funny, dude.
You think it's funny, but it's so exciting.
Yeah, I love dark comedies, as you know.
Yeah, that's why you like Trainspotting.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah, that's a great one. Dude. I love dark comedies.
What was the other one? Snatch. That was.
I just started watching Shameless, and I'm like, how did I not watch this before? This dark comedy is my kind of thing, dude. It's so good. Anyways, that's my thoughts.
That sounds good. We both gave our thoughts on it. Anyway, do you wanna end it then?
No, you like doing it, right? I can end it though.
No, I mean, sure, I can do it. That's fine. Anyway, so that's it for this week's episode of the Critical Fools podcast. This is episode number 62, and we'll be back next week with our review on The Whale. That's a more recent film than this one because this was about 6 years ago, but The Whale is still in theaters. Anyway, if you enjoyed our commentary on this movie, please like and subscribe to our channel, and let us know if there's any movies that we should check out and review on our pod. Just leave that down in the comment section. And we'll be back next week, and we're out.